All right, welcome to the show. A little bit of a cold open on the YouTube video feed. I had some behind the scenes things go wrong, and I forgot to hit the countdown as Vince was dancing in and out of the room there. How are you today, sir?
I'm great. It's the start of a new
Oh,
week. It's game week. How could you not be excited?
it is game week. How could you not be excited? Again, I didn't have a button pushed there for just a second, but we're good now. We're good now. I can hear you chuckling
Okay, good.
over there. You're right. I mean, 6 days to go until Notre Dame football. Maybe it's just the giddiness, the excitement that's got me like pushing, buttons here and there and willy nilly and wrong stuff and whatever.
It doesn't feel real. I'll be honest with you. Like I watched a lot of high school football on Friday. I watched some college football on Saturday. But we've been talking about Miami.
Congratulations, by the way, to everyone who is smart enough to take the Kansas Jayhawks to cover week 0 against Fresno State. Congratulations to all of you.
That's right. Rock chalk.
That's right.
But, I was very it doesn't feel like Notre Dame is actually going to be playing. And it's going to be even worse because we're going to have this slate of games on Saturday, still no Notre Dame. And then we get up on Sunday, wait all day long.
I know.
And then have a game at nighttime.
I don't want to hear about it from you because I've got my flight leaves in Texas. Ohio State is kicking off on Saturday. Who knows what I'm flying into with all this weather stuff that's going on in South Florida right now. We'll find out as we get closer. Could be nothing, could be could find myself sitting in Dallas for hours upon hours. Who knows?
Is that where you're connecting?
Yeah, connecting in Dallas.
So, all right.
Looking forward to some barbecue in Texas on my way through. So, yes.
There we go.
Yes. But as of now, the plan is Notre Dame kicking off the season Sunday night, Hard Rock Stadium in Miami at 7:30. And right here on Sports Radio WSBT, we've got game day coverage, 3 o'clock Eastern time. They'll be on, of course, before every Notre Dame football game all season long. Tim Grau, Jim Arizuri, they'll be on for 3.5 hours before the Irish take on the Hurricanes Sunday night. Eric Hansen and Tyler Horka join them for some analysis. And as always, they'll have some special guests. Tony Rice and Mike Golick Jr. are among those slated to appear on this week's show. So tune in for the all-new revamped game day show before every Notre Dame game all season long. Starts at 3 o'clock Eastern time, both this week and in 2 weeks when Notre Dame takes on Texas A&M because they're 7:30 p.m. kickoffs, of course, Eastern time. Sports Radio WSBT on the Sports Radio WSBT app and on the Sports Radio WSBT YouTube channel. So won't be on the Irish Breakdown YouTube channel, but on the Sports Radio WSBT YouTube channel. So make sure that you subscribe to that if you're out and about. Maybe you want to watch them and see Tony Rice and Golick and all those different people. Real quick, this week's schedule looks a little different because the game is Sunday. Marcus Freeman's press conferences are typically Monday. It'll be tomorrow at 12:30. So we'll have some plenty of sound bites from Marcus Freeman on tomorrow's show. Here's some of his thoughts, getting ready for Miami.
We'll have a depth chart.
Yeah, well, hopefully, yeah.
In theory.
We expect we'll have a depth chart. And then also Friday he does his Zoom media call. He typically does that Thursdays. It'll be Friday this week. So this is the only week where things will be off. I guess technically with the exception of the bye weeks, and next week is a bye week. So that'll look a little bit.
Get nothing.
Different. Yeah, exactly. Coming up in just a little bit, I've got an interview with a preview of Miami with insider David Lake from InsideTheU.com. So we've got that going on. But for this first segment, Vince, the ceiling and the floor for Notre Dame.
It's going to be...
Everyone wants the ceiling. No one wants to talk about the floor, though, right?
No, because who wants to be Debbie Downer, especially in game week, Sean?
Exactly.
Come on.
Exactly. Irish Gordian Knot says, how many CJ Carr questions do you think we'll hear? How many do you want? Do you want CJ Carr questions? Do you want none? Do you want many? Do you want a few?
I mean, if he's talking about the press conference, it will be many.
I assume that's what he's talking about.
Yeah, it'll be many. And then there will be some questions about the depth chart. And he will continuously try to steer it towards Miami. And there will be 2 questions about Miami, and then time will run out. That's my prediction.
Gordian Knot says as many as possible, but within reason. That seems a little conflicting.
That's
there.
gray. Too
Yes.
gray
Yes.
area.
Let's talk about the ceiling for Notre Dame this season. I mean, I think that's like it. There's a lot of it, like just talking to you last week, for example, when we were talking about the respect level and all those different kind of things. Obviously, your ceiling is very high. I think for most people, the ceiling is very high. So what is your ceiling? How does Notre Dame get there?
The ceiling's 12-0. I mean, that's the ceiling, right? That's the best that you can do. And I think that's
theoretically, I guess it's that for everybody, right?
But I don't think it's realistic though either. Like
for everybody, but for this Notre Dame
Right.
team, 12-0 is very realistic.
Absolutely it is. There's no question about it. Like if we were talking about Ball State, just to pick a team, right? We're talking about Ball State and you say the ceiling is 12-0. That's not realistic. Okay. It is realistic when talking about Notre Dame. And it is. It's 12-0. And we're talking about regular season. You know, of course, the ceiling is if they're 12-0, then they don't have to play 16 games there.
Yeah, exactly. I was just thinking the same thing. If they go 12-0 during the regular season, they're going to get a bye.
Guaranteed.
Yeah, unless there are 5 undefeated teams, which I don't see there being.
Highly doubt that.
Right? So
yeah, highly doubt that.
So 15-0 is the potential ceiling. Yeah. You know, as long as the O stays on the right side of the ledger.
And look, we're talking about a team that was in the national championship game last year, and they graduated some guys, obviously, but they still have a ton of talent returning that has that experience under their belt. So that's the ceiling. I mean, and it's not an unrealistic ceiling. Look, even if it's as an Alabama fan, if you are one of those, and you're talking about the run that they were on and all of the different national championships that they were winning, the ceiling was always undefeated national championship. Just always was, right? They only achieved that, I believe, twice. So is it the ceiling? Yes. You know, but it's also very difficult to do that. So I think that's important to understand.
USMA 87 in the YouTube chat wants to remind you about your penchant for guarantees.
You know, one time, and
all it takes. That's all it takes is one, right?
That's the reputation. You know, I just spoke it into existence. You guys just don't understand.
Yeah. All you needed was Vince going one direction to get him.
That's right.
Going in the other direction. But
he called me and he's like, so you're saying there's no chance I'm coming, huh? And I said, no chance. And he goes, aha, you're wrong.
Here I am, baby.
You're welcome, Notre Dame. You're welcome.
Yeah, I mean, I think the schedule is very favorable, obviously, for Notre Dame. I think that it's part of the reason why people are so optimistic. I really think that a lot of the optimism for fans has as much to do with the afterglow from last year and just simply carrying it over into this season. It's like, well, we were good. We were this good last year, so we've got to be good this year. But at the same time, this roster, Vince, I think that we can agree that, you know, you've been doing this for a couple of decades now. I've been doing it for 2+ decades now. It's the most talented and best roster that we have seen constructed so far in these past 2+ decades at Notre Dame. And that's a big reason why I think we all have so much confidence in what's going on. And then you add to that a piece like a young, ultra-talented quarterback like CJ Carr.
I completely agree. And you know, I try not to get overly excited about the season and all of those things. And there was a question before. It's like, is this the most excited you've ever been, you know, for Notre Dame in the last 20 years and all of those different kinds of – I'm excited every year. Like I get probably overly excited every year, and so I'm trying to tamp it down a little bit. But this is the most talented roster that Notre Dame's had in a really, really long time, top to bottom. They've had 1 through 10 before, right? Or 1 through 8, you know, really talented guys. But across the board, 1 through 22 or 1 through 25 from a starting standpoint. And then also that 25 to like 60 range is where Notre Dame has struggled in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And now there's legitimate guys in that realm, right? And then you go like 61 to the bottom of the roster. They've upgraded across the board. And so Notre Dame is now in a place where this roster is competitive at every position, and they can absorb injuries at every position for the most part, and we haven't had this kind of a situation at Notre Dame in a very, very long time. So it is something to get excited about.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at last year and how they were able to overcome all the injuries to both lines, two important, two of the more important position groups in football, the offensive line, the defensive line, and the fact that they were able to sustain multiple injuries on both of those lines and still go toe-to-toe with Georgia and Penn State, two very physical, teams that are also built down in the lines, go toe-to-toe and beat both of them in consecutive weeks during that playoff run. Again, I think that gives everyone a lot of reason for some optimism, because now, of course you want everyone to stay completely healthy, but they've already shown that even when the circumstances aren't perfect, they could overcome that and still win games against really good teams. And now, a year later, both of those lines, for one, continue to be very deep, if not deeper. There are some questions on either side, but all the position groups around the team, just depth everywhere, and guys who are going to be able to step into play. Is there a position group or some other aspect of this team that has to overachieve for Notre Dame to get there, like to reach that ceiling that we're talking about?
The term overachieve is tough, because it just depends. It depends on like what your anticipation is of that position group in the first place, right? And so, maybe the defensive tackles maybe need to overachieve a little bit, if you want to call them a position group. That was the first one that came to mind, because I think the secondary can play exactly how I need them to play, or how I think they're going to play. That's a championship level playing. Linebacker, same situation. Defensive ends, same situation, right? So that narrows it down to defensive tackles on the defensive side of the ball. As far as offense is concerned, we consider the offensive line to be a Joe Moore Award finalist, right? We consider the running back room to be one of the best in the country. We feel good about the wide receivers, but
still got to prove it. Still got to show it.
Yeah. They may need to overachieve a little bit to get this team where they need to go. And with a rookie quarterback, I don't think anybody thinks it's going to be a Heisman season for CJ Carr or Kenny Minchey if he would have started. So I don't know that they need to overachieve. They just need to not mess it up. Like, don't get in the way, still push the ball down the field and do all of those things. Just don't get in the way. So I think it's defensive tackle for me.
Okay, you came back around to that, and that's kind of where I was going. I wasn't sure exactly where you were going as you were going through that. Andre says defensive line and offensive line in the YouTube chat. I would disagree about the offensive line, because it would be very hard for the offensive line to overachieve at this point, because there is so much expectation. We're going to hear the Miami interview here in a minute, and we did one of these. I'll record with you, you record with me, so we flipped, the tables on each other yesterday when we were recording these. And, look, I told him this is, Notre Dame won the Joe Moore Award in 2017. This shapes up to be the best Notre Dame offensive line since that 2017 team. So overachieving, I think, is going to be really hard for this offensive line to do. I think you can make a case for the defensive line, because I think my two positions, in terms of overachieving, just based on what we know about them right now, like you, I would say defensive tackle, because they obviously lack some experience there. They do have more size than what they've had before, but it's still kind of more like when you look at, like Donovan Heinisch being as undersized that he is, and even Jared Dawson not being, big classic, size for that position. It's more about the numbers, I think, that Notre Dame can throw at people than it is just the studs standing out. So I think that there's probably some degree of overachieving that those guys are going to have to do. And then the wide receivers, again, a lot more expectation, and we think having a different kind of quarterback should help them. But really, I think until Notre Dame, until they're you see someone close to having a Chase Claypool type season in 2019, anything is going to be an overachievement just based on what the last few seasons have been like at the wide receiver position for the Irish.
100% on wide receiver. And I think that that's an easy place to go on offense. It's because they haven't done it in a long time. And you can blame some of that on the quarterback, and I do, right? But there's also some things that the wide receivers as a whole have not been doing well. And I think that they are past that. And I think that, last year at this time, we were projecting guys who were at the lower levels of college football that they were going to be able to do it as well at Notre Dame. And it didn't really come to fruition, right? Again, part of that was the quarterback, but part of that was them as well. And, now you've got guys coming over from an ACC team, from a Big Ten team, and guys that you have homegrown. And I think that the conglomeration of wide receivers now at Notre Dame is at a much higher level than it has been. But I still think that they need to overachieve a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I don't know where the expectation level is.
That was what makes this first matchup with Miami so intriguing to me, is kind of what you're talking about. Because like Notre Dame's two big wide receiver transfers, as you just said, one came from Virginia, one came from Wisconsin. Now, neither of those programs has necessarily been great the last few years, but both of those guys, Pauling and Fields, very productive wide receivers in the Power Four, playing against a Power Four schedule year in and year. And that's what Notre Dame is going to play. Whereas I know Miami, and you'll hear the interview again with David Lake here in a few minutes, they're pretty confident with this secondary that they've got that has got like 7 transfers over there. And I'll touch on this again more later, but like they've got a guy, okay, Rutgers, okay, it was in the Big Ten. They got a guy coming over from Rutgers, but they've got like Jacksonville State, Middle Tennessee State. How's that going to transfer to playing against a Power Four schedule? That's what, and like I think that this game is going to be pretty telling for both teams when you look at both of those groups, Miami's secondary and Notre Dame's wide receiver core.
Yep, completely agree. I think that is going to be like Miami's going to have a lot of confidence in their secondary and the guys that they brought in and things like that. And I think they're going to load the box and they're going to tell their secondary, hey, lock these guys up. It's a rookie quarterback. Do your job. And it's going to be.
The question's going to be, can they do it?
Yeah, 100%. It's going to be up to Notre Dame and Denbrock and Carr and these receivers to take advantage of that. And if they can't do it, that is a path to a Miami victory.
And there's big question marks with Miami's linebackers as well. So like when you talk about, okay, great, load the box, but what kind of advantage is that actually going to get you against that offensive line and those running backs? That's, again, I think that's going to be a big question in this matchup. So when you look at Notre Dame's floor potentially for this season, the aspect of this that nobody wants to talk about, the worst case scenario, I'm kind of feeling 9-3 is it. Oof. This is worst, like I'm still sitting on closer to 10-2, but I'm going worst case 9-3. Where are you on the floor? Like if you tell me one loss, you're just going to have to leave the show and not come back.
I think
I don't know what that was.
That was me closing my laptop. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
It didn't really, that doesn't work for radio, obviously, but I'm pretty firm on 10-2. I think 9-3, you're looking at a rash of injuries and a lot, like Armageddon has happened. Like there's a lot that has gone wrong for them to be 9-3. I just think they can just flat out athlete enough teams and just, be better.
I do too.
Have a better roster.
But shouldn't they have been able to do that against Northern Illinois last year?
They should have, but they were still 11-1.
That's why it's 3 instead of 2 for me, just allowing for that. Because, like, my worst case scenario, like, how do they find themselves at, whether it's 10-2 or 9-3? Well, the quarterback has more problems than maybe we anticipated against good competition early in the season. And then, like, I think it's, like, less about injuries and turnovers are a thing, because that's been something that has not been a Notre Dame characteristic in Marcus Freeman, and even going back to Brian Kelly, like they take care of the football. So it would be uncharacteristic sloppiness with the football while breaking in a new quarterback, and then somewhere along the way, you find yourself dropping a game that you're not supposed to. But I agree, in general, they should be able to out-athlete virtually. what I'd say 10 out of 12 teams on the schedule,
if not more.
9 out of 12. Yeah.
Yeah, if not more. And
Yeah.
that's like what you just said to me, that's one loss. And then I go to worst case scenario, okay, now it's 2 losses. Like that's where I'm at as far as like, a quarterback having the struggles that I think we can anticipate, some injuries and things like that. Would you say last year's schedule or this year's schedule is harder for Notre Dame?
I think this year's.
Okay.
Slightly.
Do you think this team is better or worse than last year?
Better.
Okay. That doesn't say 9-3 to me. You know what I mean?
No, but again, we have an unknown with the quarterback. We're banking a lot. We're banking a lot on a guy we haven't seen play a real snap yet.
First 4 games of last year was a struggle at quarterback. Like, it's not like we were pushing the ball down the field and things of that nature.
A struggle throwing the ball at quarterback. This is why stats are for losers, Vince, because,
oh boy,
if we have to go back and lean on that a little bit, because Riley Leonard obviously found ways to win games that were not necessarily the traditional way to win games. Whereas we all know CJ Carr is going to be a much more traditional quarterback. He's not going to be able to just bail Notre Dame out time and time again with his legs and do the kind of things that Riley Leonard was able to do. I get what you're saying, but that's why it looks so different, because you had a different kind of quarterback back there.
Right. I get that. I totally understand.
He was also a veteran who just knew how to find ways to win games, as we saw in the opener against Texas A&M, whether it was a throw or a run. And we obviously saw that all along the way, including in the playoffs in the march up to the national championship game.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. It's still 10-2 for me. I feel like, honestly, I will be very disappointed if it's 10-2, because at least one of those losses is a head scratcher. So that's why 10-2. I will give you one head scratcher. You know what I mean? I'll give you one, and then another one. Now that we got 2 now that there's 2, it's like that's the basement. That's the floor for me.
Yeah. Irish English says that's one of his all-time favorite quotes, and he has plenty. Well, I'm glad
he's got a list.
To hear that. Yeah, nice. I am Tenzin, the son of Aang, said that we're Notre Dame haters. I think he's joking a little bit about that. Real quick, what aspect of this Notre Dame team, this year's Notre Dame team, would surprise you the most if it's not as good as you think it's going to be?
Let's see here. I would say, to be honest with you, the offensive line. And I know that everybody's wringing their hands about the pass pro and all that. But if the offensive line is a sieve and they just can't block anybody, and it's just, it's a disaster, right? And they just can't get anything going offensively because they can't run the football. They can't protect the quarterback, all of those different things. If that actually happens, I will be stunned. I will be stunned because there's just too much stinking talent across the board and in the twos for me to ever believe that will be the case.
Justin in the YouTube chat agrees with you on the pass protection. Bobby O'Shea in the YouTube chat says running back. I think that's a really good one. As stacked as that running back room is, I'm just going with the secondary though, man, because
they're so good. Just
looking at those guys, and even David Lake, who you're going to hear from Miami, was, said multiple times when I was talking to him, that Notre Dame secondary might be considered the best secondary in the nation. And I find that hard to dispute.
And that's coming from a Miami guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm going with the secondary, even though O-line and running back are both good answers. I'll go with that. Time Cone in the YouTube chat says CJ needs to be good for a perfect season, not perfect, but good. I would agree with that.
I would too.
Because he's got so much talent around him, because he's got that great offensive line, because he does have an improved set of wide receivers and a very dynamic tight end and those running backs, maybe the most dynamic running back in the nation. He does not have to be great. He just has to, I'm not saying he has to be a game manager, but he just has to play within the system basically and make the plays that he needs to make.
He needs to be a guy that can be counted on. He needs to be a guy that defensive coordinators are like, okay, well, we've got to account for this guy and what he's going to be able to do. That has not always been the case at Notre Dame. The quarterback has not been a difference maker, been a playmaker maybe at times with their legs or whatever, But a difference maker, Notre Dame hasn't had that in a long time, specifically in the passing game, obviously. But he just needs to be accounted for. Like they, like I said, when the defensive staff is putting together a game plan against Notre Dame's offense, they got to be like, well, we can't stack the box because CJ Carr is good enough to throw over the top of us and make us pay. So we're going to have to come up with another way to slow down this offense. That's all you need from your quarterback. The threat of, which means you have to show it on film, right? But the threat of, do not load the box because we will make you pay.
Right.
That's it.
You do that a couple times, it changes the game.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Don't have to do it all the time. You don't have to force the issue. And he's got the kind of wide receivers and tight end again, that he can do that kind of stuff with. All right. Ceiling in the floor for Notre Dame. We're going to take a timeout. Coming up next, I've teased this a couple of times, the insider interview with David Lake, who covers the Miami Hurricanes. He's from InsideTheU.com. I heard him asking a couple of questions at Mario Cristobal's press conference earlier today. That's coming up next. We continue with Budweiser's weekday sports beats on Sports Radio 960 and 106.1 FM. And, of course, irishbreakdown.com, along with Vince DeDario. I'm Sean Stires. It is game week, and again, the weekly schedule here on this show looks a little bit different this week because of the fact that Marcus Freeman's press conference is shuttled, and like it'll be tomorrow, and the game is on Sunday, and all those kind of good things. Right now, I'm not going to waste any time so I don't run out of time at the end of this hour. David Lake, special guest, joined me. We recorded this yesterday. We talked a little bit about the Miami Hurricanes. He's from InsideTheU.com. Well, it's finally game week, and David Lake is with us from Inside the U. He's back with us. We talked to him back after spring practice ended. It feels like, David, a lot of optimism for the Hurricanes coming into this season. Is this maybe like where would you rate this optimism compared? You've been doing it for a while. Like, is this maybe as optimistic as people around the program have been for a while?
I was talking about this with my coworker Chris Stock, and it's maybe the last time I could really put it on par with optimism amongst the fan base was back in 2018. I think Miami entered that season or preseason. They were top 10 in the country as well. They had a season opener against LSU that year, and LSU kind of handled business in that game and won pretty comfortably. That was Joe Burrow's first game at LSU. The year before, they were an incredible team. But that year, there was a lot of optimism. The year before was Miami's last real successful year. That was the year Miami played Notre Dame in 2017. Mm-hmm. They won 10 games that year and returned a lot of key starters. And so, there was that optimism. I do think, look, this is probably optimistic to say as well, but I do think this team, and I also have the benefit of hindsight, this team's just more legitimate, more of a proven commodity at quarterback, and just the body types are a little bit better. But to your point, yes, there is a lot of optimism. Since the last time we spoke in the spring, Miami really made the moves that I thought needed to be made in the spring portal window and really boosted the depth and frankly, high-end talent on the team in a lot of different position groups. So that helped too. And then just seeing Carson Beck, right? Carson Beck's been a full go since about June, and everything's been good from his end as well. So plenty of reasons for optimism, but to an extent, that is what it's like being a Miami Hurricanes fan or publisher. Miami is off-season champions a lot of years. We'll see if they can get it done on the field this year.
I mean, business is always better when they're good, right?
Yes.
So, that's the way it goes. You mentioned Carson Beck, so let's just go with him. There's obviously a bunch of things I think to talk about with this team. But he had the elbow surgery last year. It sounds like he's 100%. Like, how would you rate the training camp that he had?
100%. Everything from what I've been told, exceeded expectations, what they thought he was going to have, what he's going to look like coming in. Because really, they get the OTA type of stuff in the summer, but even that's not real football. As soon as it was full go at the start of camp, he's looked good. No issues at all with the elbow and the command of the offense. They ended camp with the second scrimmage, and he was very sharp in that scrimmage. And, just what I've seen, they've allowed me to watch some of these practices as well. And he looks good. He looks sharp. So, to me, he looks like an NFL draftable type of quarterback out there. Now he's got to go out and perform to that level. And what round, I think that's whatever the discussion is, that comes down to his performance. But he certainly looks the part. He is in command of this offense. And, I think he's going to have a productive year.
He's obviously been around the block. He's a veteran. What's the biggest question maybe that you have about him coming into this season?
I think you look at his Georgia stuff. It's all the, under pressure type of statistics, the whole, when he is pressured and has to maybe make some off-platform throws or, gets flushed out of the pocket, the decision-making at times can get a little, iffy. But when he's on schedule, he gets the ball out very quick. And, Shannon Dawson runs an air raid type of offense, and that's what he wants to do. Get the ball out quick, find the open receiver, right? He doesn't necessarily dial up plays to specific receivers. It's find the open guy on a given play. And Carson Beck's been doing that. And, truthfully, a big part of why I think this transition is going to be a productive one for Carson Beck is the offensive line. They give him all day to throw. And we spoke with Shannon Dawson, the offensive coordinator, maybe like a week ago. And he was saying one thing Carson told him, during one of their quarterback meetings was, man, I got to get used to having all of this time to operate. I'm not really used to this. So
Interesting.
I do think and look, the Georgia stuff I think is kind of well documented at this point, and you can look at that as spin in terms of like those receivers led the country in drops. His pass protection, frankly, wasn't good at Georgia. It definitely wasn't up to the Georgia standard that you would expect on a Georgia offensive line, and the running backs were very average in terms of production. So I think there is a chip on his shoulder to go out and show like, hey, I'm still that guy you thought I was this time last year. And this will be, the first opportunity to go do that.
Well, you mentioned Shannon Dawson, the offensive coordinator, and he does have the air raid background that you talked about. With that offensive line, it sounds like, do you expect them to pound it a little bit more, like run the ball a little bit more this year and kind of mixed in with that Mark Fletcher, their number 2 guy last year? Like what's the expectation of him? Like, is he ready to be a number 1 guy?
Yeah, I do think they're going to lean more on the run than they did last year. Last year, Cam Ward was a tremendous playmaker. So you just kind of put the ball in his hands and he could create off schedule, if that makes sense. I think this year it's going to be much more of an on schedule type of offense in terms of passing attack. And then, lean on the run too. And yeah, Mark Fletcher, I do think he's ready to step up into a bigger role. But I will say Jordan Lyle, who, at the start of camp was viewed as the backup because he's, a rising sophomore. So he's in his second year. I think during camp, he really turned some heads. And I think, you could make the argument that he is the most dynamic talent of the room. And so he would be maybe one of the breakout players from a national perspective to watch. Now, as a true freshman last year, he got in a little bit. He was like the 3rd or 4th running back, depending on, the time of the season. And he finished with 400 yards. I think he averaged 7.5-ish yards per carry and really flashed some explosive run ability he's a guy that's like 205, 210. So he's got the thicker body and the speed. So he might be a guy that at the end of the year could be RB1. He might be RB1 against Notre Dame. That might be more of a 50-50 type of situation. Okay. They also really like Shamar Brown, the North Dakota State transfer, who last year was an 1,100-yard guy, was the freshman of the year at that FCS level. He's also 5'11", 215. He's well put together, and he flashed a lot in camp too. So they are confident they have 3 guys that they can ride during the course of the game. They're 3 backs that are 210 plus, which at Miami, in recent years has been kind of rare, those 200 plus, having that many 200 plus backs. And I do think they're going to lean on that group.
What about the receiving core? That was a question mark that we talked about back in the spring, and they brought in some guys from the portal. Is it a confidence or maybe a, concern / question mark, or however you want to categorize it at this point?
I think it is a question mark against a secondary the caliber of Notre Dame. I think it's fair to look at it that way. You're going against a secondary with NFL level talent, right? And so can this receiving group get open against that level of guy? I am a little bit doubtful about that, but I don't know if that is, again, I don't know if that's necessarily going to be asked of them. I think, as you know, the air raid, it was created to beat teams with better talent, right? So we're going to spread you out. We're just going to find the open guy. And one guy that's emerged since the last time we talked, and we talked about it a little bit probably after spring is true freshman Malachi Toney, who's going to be working out of the slot. Shannon Dawson's offense, the last 4 years, the last 4 offenses he's called, the slot receiver has generated 1,000 yards that season. So as Tank Dell at Houston did it twice. These last 2 years was Xavier Restrepo twice. Malachi Toney is a reclassified true freshman, so he's supposed to be a senior right now. But he is what my eyes saw in practice. He's going to be highly productive this year for Miami. Now, will he be ready to do that in game 1 against Notre Dame? Will he be given that opportunity in game 1 against Notre Dame? I think yes, but I think it's fair to be a little skeptic for a reclassified true freshman to be given that opportunity. So he's a guy to know. And then CJ Daniels, the Liberty transfer, LSU transfer, he's like your solid possession receiver, 6'2", 210. He's not going to create a ton of crazy separation against these Notre Dame corners, but he's gonna get contested catch opportunities, and he's an older guy, veteran guy that comes down with those type of opportunities. And then another guy, Josh Moore, is a true freshman explosive threat on the outside. He really emerged in camp, 6'4", 210, probably the fastest guy on the outside. He's kind of like your go ball threat. And then they just plug and play a bunch. They have, honestly, they have 6 or 7 guys. So it's kind of like a group mentality type of thing, which, frankly, isn't ideal. You definitely want to know who your wide receiver 1 is and have those type of elite talents. But I do think, I guess one fair way to put it, right? I think Carson Beck is going to be a productive quarterback this year, right? He's going to throw for, to me, 3,400, 3,500 yards in this offense. So if he's doing that, the yards got to come from somewhere. Yeah. And so, but again, the flip side with this Notre Dame conversation is, can they get open against these type of guys? We'll see.
Could be I think one of the big there's going to be a lot of key matchups in this game, but I think that is definitely one of them. Then you flip it around to the other side of the ball. Again, secondary, a major issue for the Hurricanes last year, but they went in deep in the transfer portal, bringing in 4 corners and a couple safeties as well. You felt like that there was a case coming out of the spring that maybe it could be the strength of the team. How do you feel about them coming out of training camp now a few months later?
I feel like corner is, in terms of talent and depth, it's probably the strongest position on the defense of the team. I think you still got to give it to the offensive line. But corners is very strong now. You got OJ Frederic, you got Xavier Lucas, the Wisconsin transfer. Both those guys are sophomores. Very talented, very aggressive, kind of in-your-face man coverage corners, which Miami didn't really have last year. And then your third or fourth corner, it's a competition between Damari Brown, who is a very talented former 4-star recruit, dealt with injuries last year, so he didn't really play much last year, but he's been healthy in camp and he's looking really good. And then Ethan O'Connor is a transfer from Washington State who played 700, 800 defensive snaps last year and had 4 picks. And so, he's your 4th corner, essentially. You're in a good spot. Charles Brantley is your 5th corner. He's played 1,500 snaps at Michigan State. Keontae Scott is a spring portal addition he came from Houston, but he played the previous 3 years at Auburn. He gives them a true nickel. They did not have a true nickel last year in their secondary, and he's going to really elevate that position year over year. And then safety, they brought in 2 transfers, Zechariah Poyser from Jacksonville State. He's kind of a solid, steady. You don't really notice him much, which, could be a bad thing because he's not necessarily making plays, but he's also just not getting killed, right? He's not killing your defense. So there's that. And then Jacoby Thomas is the Tennessee transfer. He's your bigger bodied in the box safety, 6'2", 210, 215. He's done a nice job on the back end too. And then some depth. Depth is kind of something to watch at safety, but some young talent is flashing a lot at safety. Probably won't be trusted too much in this Notre Dame game. They'll probably ride with their older guys. But in terms of just talent, I do think this secondary is totally flipped and should be one of the strengths of the team, which I think trickles down to the rest of the defense. It's just, last year, they had to cover up so much, and communication was an issue on the back end because of that. And, I think this group, particularly at corner, I think you can man coverage those guys, and that opens up a lot with the rest of the defense.
Well, they brought in Corey Heatherman, the defensive coordinator from Minnesota, as well, and the goal of simplifying things. I think that was kind of the term that either you used or I've seen. Did it feel like they accomplished that with what you were able to see in camp and in the spring, for that matter?
I think it is simplified. I think I'm curious how this shows up in the season, but I do think he's willing to really give players an opportunity in sub packages, if that makes sense. So if you're a linebacker that's really good at coverage, but maybe not the most physical, we're going to give you an opportunity in obvious passing downs to go be good in coverage, play to your strength. Same with like D-line and those guys as well. If you're better at pass rushing, et cetera, et cetera. So I do think he simplified things. I do think the guys are playing faster, but things are different under the bright lights of a real game.
Sure.
And again, like I do think having corners that you can trust to just be on an island by themselves is a game changer in terms of like what's being asked of the linebackers, of the safeties. And so I do think that is going to also significantly help the defense look like it's more on the same page than it was a year ago.
Where are the linebackers? Because it seemed again like that was one of the, like if you looked at the whole team, it seemed like that was one of the bigger concerns that you had. Is that kind of the same right now, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think the depth is thin in my opinion, but I think their top two linebackers are solid. So they added Motore from Rutgers. He was a veteran guy, injured last year, but and he's coming off his second ACL at Rutgers. But he is a veteran guy. He's just an old 23, 24-year-old type of guy, hard-nosed type of guy, big body, physical type of guy. He's really solidified things at middle linebacker, and he's had a very good camp. And then next to him is Wesley Bassane, who's a fourth-year Hurricane senior. He's up to 230 pounds. He's really bulked up his frame since last year, and he's also performed well in camp. After them, in my opinion, I think there's a drop-off, but I do think those two can definitely get it done. Are they dynamic NFL type of linebackers? We'll see. I think Torre, frankly, when he's healthy, is a productive college-level linebacker, and he can give you some things like pass rushing ability too. Wesley, to me, needs to take that next step in terms of being a playmaker. But I do feel better about that group after they added Motori in the spring portal window.
Sounds like they've got some talent on the defensive line, both from recruiting and just, like a guy like Ruben Bain, who had 7.5 sacks a couple of years ago. And I know he was injured last year. I'm curious, like what the depth of that unit looks like and kind of what the expectations are for that group coming into the year.
I think the depth at defensive end, it's a bit unknown right now, but I do think it's going to be good. It's 5-star second-year players getting their opportunities this year. And in camp, they all performed well. So Ruben Bain, coaches have been raving about him. He's changed his body since last year because last year he was banged up, soft tissue injuries. So he really focused on reshaping his body, and he's looked great in camp. Same with Akeem Mesidor on the other side. He's your 5th or 6th year guy who's been productive, but also had some nagging injuries here and there during his career, and he's looked great too. Behind them is Armando Blunt, who is former 5-star recruit. He's kind of your physical. It's interesting. He's a 5-star guy, 5-star recruit, but he's a try-hard, high-motor defensive end. And they'll kick him inside too because he brings that physicality inside on pass rushing situations. And then on the other side is Marquise Lightfoot, who is a former 5-star recruit as well from the Chicago area, kind of like your 6'4", 6'5", 230, 240 pass rusher, twitchy type of guy. So those are the depth pieces. Malik Bryan is another smaller, undersized pass rushing type. Hayden Lowe is a true freshman who looks like a 4th-year senior, but he's still kind of figuring things out from a technique standpoint. So DN depth, I think is good, in a good spot. D tackle, I think, is another conversation. From an upside, from a talent being ready to perform now perspective, and from a depth perspective. Justin Scott is a former 5-star recruit. He's very talented. He looks the part. Is he ready to be the man in this type of role? I think he flashes that ability. We'll see if he can sustain that type of ability over the course of a season. They really like David Blay, the Louisiana Tech transfer portal addition. He's kind of emerged as probably the best D tackle in camp, honestly. And then Ahmad Moten is a returning guy. He flashes some major playmaking ability too, but the consistency is kind of up and down with him. After that, to me, the D tackle depth kind of dips, and you probably got to start kicking in some DNs like a Ruben Bain or a Akeem Mesidor or Armando Blunt. But I think one of the biggest keys to this season in terms of is Miami really ready to, number one, make the college football playoff and maybe even do some damage if they do make the college football playoff? Is Justin Scott ready to be that guy that goes from being a guy that looks the part, flashes the part, to being a guy that is like a legitimate game wrecker on the inside?
And that is David Lake from InsideTheU.com with a little Miami insider information. Some interesting stuff there. Going to take a break. We come back. Vince DeDario is going to rejoin me. He'll be able to take his mute button off, and we'll get some of his thoughts on what we just heard right there from David Lake about the Miami Hurricanes. Of course, Notre Dame and Miami kick off their seasons Sunday night at 7:30. A lot of 5-stars on that roster, Vince says. Coming up next, we'll talk about that a little bit. We've got Rapid Fire coming up in the second hour. I think you're going to want to be with us for Rapid Fire today. A very special Rapid Fire. I think we've got some good stuff lined up in hour number 2 as well. That's coming up. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com continues. We get back a little earlier than you thought we were going to there, Vince.
I never know. So what's interesting, a little peek behind the curtain, is we don't get a chance to really communicate during the breaks. Because of the setup. So I'm not really sure when we come back, and it's all good. It's always a nice little surprise.
Yeah, someone said on the Champions Lounge the other day, the Irish Breakdown Champions Lounge, that sometimes he startled a little bit when we come back from break because it's silence in the YouTube, and then we come back and it's like, boom, there it is. And I'm like, yeah, I think I startle Vince and Jesse sometimes too.
Yeah, it's all good though.
Well, we've got a lot coming up in the second hour of the show in rapid fire Notre Dame topics and some other stuff as well. We just heard from David Lake from InsideTheU.com. So anything stand out to you that you heard there?
So the couple things that stood out to me. Number one, the defense feels like they were put together at a shopping center. Every single guy he talked about is from someplace else. Like none of those guys, except for a few of the guys up front, are homegrown guys. And it's not specifically to Miami, but it's my general thought process, my general thoughts on the transfer portal and putting your team together and all that. You're not going to have consistent success when all you're doing is going to the portal to put your team together.
No, I get that. You're not going to have consistent success, but the only thing that matters for our purposes is can they have success
in the first game?
Notre Dame team, game Sunday night. It seems like because like one of the benefits that a guy like Curt Cignetti, as much as we like to, poke at Curt Cignetti and have fun with Curt Cignetti, part of the reason he had as much success as he had last year is because he brought a core group of guys with him from James Madison to Indiana. So they knew him, They knew his system, they knew the expectations. They helped the current guys on the team, and other guys who came in from other places. They helped set the expectation with those guys as well. And as we've talked about, I think it's going to be harder for Curt Cignetti now this year because he's not going to have that same group of guys. And so, like a team, to your point, like Mario Cristobal in Miami, bringing all these guys in from different places, how is that going to go, especially early in the season when cohesion is obviously something that you're still looking for because you also have a new defensive coordinator to go along with it.
Right. And they all come from drastically different programs and drastically different backgrounds and all of these different things. And to expect them to be at their best, their peak, their top level in game one is unrealistic. Now, do they have the talent to do it? Sure. But if what he was saying is accurate and they're just going to load the box and let these transfer DBs go one-on-one with Notre Dame's receivers,
I like that matchup.
Yeah. Okay. Good luck. I guess we'll see what happens. May the best man win kind of a thing. But I think that's a risky way to go about trying to beat Notre Dame.
I mean, I think the biggest question is, essentially when it comes to receivers and secondary, I like the matchups on both sides of the ball in Notre Dame's favor. Now, like the offensive defensive lines could be a wash. We'll see. I still think that Notre Dame's physicality, like on both sides, similar to Texas A&M last year, takes over as the game goes on. But I lost my train of thought with I think the biggest question from Notre Dame's perspective, or from like the Miami defense's perspective, is can they confuse a young first-time starting quarterback, especially, like if the environment is anywhere close to what it was 8 years ago when Notre Dame last played there. And I realize they just played there in the Orange Bowl last year, completely different kind of environment when you're looking at a 50-50 crowd in a, like a playoff, you've got both Penn State and Notre Dame fans there, for that kind of setting compared to a true home game environment that Miami is going to have. That's the biggest thing to me is can they confuse CJ Carr and make him make some mistakes? I think that's how they gain an advantage over Notre Dame. That's really one of the few ways that I think that they can gain a true advantage over Notre Dame.
I don't disagree. We saw what that atmosphere did to Notre Dame in 2017. Different scenario, different head coach, different players, and we'll see how that affects them this time around. If Notre Dame doesn't do what they should do and quiet this crowd, it's going to be a factor for the entire game. That's on Notre Dame, in my opinion. Don't wait for Miami to make a mistake. You've got to take it to them to quiet down the crowd. And exactly. If you can't, like I said, you can't do that, you're in trouble because that crowd will help them big time.
All right, we will take a timeout. Archer says their entire starting defense is not transfers. No, not the entire starting defense.
7 or 8 of them.
I think it's like 7 or 8 out of 11 are transfers.
I mean, and he's comparing Archer's comparing those guys to Notre Dame's 2 transfers that Notre Dame is counting on being good. in Fields and and
Right.
Pauling. Like
Well,
that's,
and
that's
then,
a completely different situation.
I'm going to talk about this matchup later in the week, but he brought it up. The Malachi Tony, the young
Yeah.
slot receiver that he's talking about. He's talented from everything that I've heard, and they like to feed that slot position. He's going to go head to head with Devontae Smith. So you're talking about a young, talented guy. They're both the same size, but as I asked Mike Mickens a couple weeks ago when we got to talk him, Devontae Smith plays a lot bigger than 5'11". They're both 5'11". Devontae Smith. So you're talking a veteran who plays very physically and plays bigger than his
Played at
5'11"
Alabama.
frame. Yeah, against a true talented true freshman in Malachi Tony. So I think that that's going to be an important
Who
matchup.
played 3 years of high school football, by the way, because he should be a senior right now.
Exactly.
So before we hit the break, I wanted to bring this up from Mistopoli. He says, I wonder if Notre Dame has more starters that have played in Hard Rock than Miami does. Great question.
They probably do.
They probably do.
Maybe like the offensive line, offensive line, couple guys on the defensive line, the linebackers, like that's kind of what Miami has in terms. That's where most of their starters are on those positions. Yep. All right. After the top of the hour break, we'll be back with rapid fire in hour 2. More Notre Dame conversation and more coming up with Vince DeDario. I'm Sean Stires. It is hour 2 of Budweiser's weekday sports beat. There we are with IrishBreakdown.com. I didn't take the cover page off the YouTube before I started talking, but hey, you could hear me in any case. I'm Sean Stires, along with Vince DeDario. Vince, it's hour 2, and that can mean only one thing. It's rapid fire time.
Let's hit it, baby.
All right, here we go. So we know CJ Carr is going to make his starting debut on the road at Miami this Sunday night. Does that prospect have you more excited or nervous right now?
I'm excited. I mean, there's no point in being nervous at this point. I'm excited about it. Now, you asked me that question at about if the game actually kicks about 7:38 or so, about 7:35, I'll be nervous. But as of right now, I mean, I have gone into this entire offseason thinking that CJ Carr was going to be the quarterback at Miami. So it just hasn't really changed for me. I still feel good about Notre Dame's chances. I'm not nervous at all. I anticipate some mistakes, but I also anticipate the wow plays. So I'm excited.
For me, like the way camp has kind of played out, maybe put a little bit of nervousness in there. And I know a lot of people, there's a lot of trepidation about, well, he's never started. And, the experience factor, those are all real things. And the fact that he's going to go on the road into this environment, we were just talking about this last hour. I think that Miami's greatest, the greatest shot that they have at some advantage is an experienced defensive coordinator finding a way to try to confuse a young quarterback. Does it turn into a turnover? Does it mean that he has to burn a timeout here or there that you don't want to burn like early in the half? All those different kind of things. But look, as I've said all along, like this is a really talented quarterback. We've had a lot of confidence and faith in this guy from the beginning. He is a redshirt freshman, so it's not like he's coming straight out of high school and onto the field now. He's been here for a year. He's been in the system. And I've used this example a lot. Jameis Winston in 2013 was in the exact same situation that CJ Carr is in right now. Redshirt freshman, making his first career start on the road. And of course, Florida State that season, Jameis Winston ends up winning a Heisman Trophy. They go undefeated, 14-0, win a national championship. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to be CJ Carr this year, but Jameis Winston, road game at Pittsburgh, a Pittsburgh team that included Aaron Donald on the roster, lit up Pittsburgh in his first career start, like threw 4 touchdown passes, tore it up, and the rest is history. My point is very similar to Notre Dame. My biggest point is very similar to Notre Dame. He played with a roster that was obviously national championship caliber, and that's what Notre Dame has. CJ Carr has got a great roster around him. It doesn't have to be all him. And, again, like going back to that comparison with Jameis Winston, like CJ Carr at least got to get his feet wet. He at least got to get on the field last year. Winston in 2013, they didn't have the 4-game rule where you could play in 4 games and still redshirt. He was just like CJ Carr, not a down, he had actually fewer snaps to his credit than CJ Carr has coming into this season. So again, like that doesn't guarantee that CJ Carr is going to do that, but there's plenty of evidence that like it's happened before. And when you look at the first-time starters who have gone to the playoffs over the last several years, there are plenty of examples of those. So it's a great roster that's going to be around CJ Carr, and so it is much more excitement than any nervousness that I have as well.
It's not a narrative, but the talking point of CJ Carr and his, lack of experience and how that's going to be the downfall of Notre Dame and all of these different, things that we're hearing over the last couple of days since he was named the starter, for me, kind of is akin to all the talk last year about going to Texas A&M in the heat. It's like, okay, is it going to be a factor? Sure. I don't think it's going to be the deciding factor, and I think Notre Dame's going to be just fine. That's where I'm at with CJ Carr and the inexperience piece. He was on the sidelines for Texas A&M, so he was in an environment that was super loud.
Yeah.
I realized he wasn't on the field, but he got to experience it. He's been on the sideline for every game that Notre Dame played last year, and obviously played in a few of them,
right,
including the national championship game.
Yeah, I was going to say, including the playoff run, the national championship game, the whole thing. He's been in those environments, even though he hasn't been on the field.
But he's been in the environment, and he's got a different kind of pedigree, being a coach's grandson and all of those different things. Like he's grown up around this stuff. I would be surprised. I would be shocked if he didn't handle the atmosphere in a positive way. That was something that would surprise me, to be perfectly honest with you. Again, I'm not saying he's going to be perfect. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying I don't think it's going to affect him in the negative way that some people seem to think it's going to.
Yeah. Like the only thing that gives me any pause at all is the interceptions, the turnovers that we heard about. 3 that we saw on day 1 of training camp, and then we heard that obviously that was a continuing theme over the course of training camp. That's the only thing that gives me any pause at all. But again, like we've seen this guy operate, and I think that like when you look at all the intangibles that he has, I think that there are still many more positives to Carr being in this situation than there are negatives, because of experience.
Yep, no doubt.
Fill in the blank. As of today, there's rain in the forecast in Miami next Sunday. That means blank.
That means more cowbell, which means more running the football. So I'm all for it. Look, rain is going to be an issue. Okay, that's fine. It's going to be sloppy. It's real grass, obviously. So, that could be a factor and all of that. If you're looking at who runs the ball better, pretty sure that's going to be Notre Dame. So I think that plays into Notre Dame. And look, they're still going to throw the football, obviously. So I still think bad weather plays into the hands of Notre Dame.
Yeah, I do as well, because one, again, we heard the interview with David Lake in the first hour. Miami's going to have a good offensive line. I'm just not sure about these Miami running backs. There's not a comparison between Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price and Fletcher and, what Miami is going to have on their side of the ball. So when it comes to if it is sloppy and passing is at a premium or even potentially non-existent, I won't say completely non-existent, but I've got to give just a huge check mark in Notre Dame's favor in that aspect, because it's kind of backs and offensive line that they have.
And they can just keep running different backs at them, over and over. Like Notre Dame is 4 or 5 guys deep in the backfield, and they could just keep bringing in fresh legs. And Miami's not as deep as Notre Dame is in the running back room. And that's not even a debate. Like, that's not even a question. So it favors Notre Dame. Look, Miami's offensive line is very good. Okay, got it. I still think Notre Dame's offensive line is better. And I also think, now, here's where I will say Notre Dame needs to be better at run defense in order to be a national championship winner, right? Mm-hmm. So what is that going to look like? Okay, that's a question mark. Let's go for it. But I still like Notre Dame's offense against Miami's defense in that scenario.
No, I mean, and that's true, like with the run defense. But also, if you look back at last season, the only game like USC, like that whole what USC was able to do offensively, both passing and running the football, because like that's like, go back and look at that box score. They didn't quite get to 200, but they came closer to 200 than any other traditional offense during the regular season. And beyond USC, it was the 2 teams at the end of the season, Penn State and Ohio State, in the semifinals and the national championship game, that had NFL running back. Like, there were 4 NFL running backs that Notre Dame faced in those last 2 games. 2 of them went, early in this year's NFL draft. 2 of them are going to go pretty early in next year's NFL draft. So other than that, other teams that's just to my point that I was just making a minute ago. Yeah, Miami's got a great offensive line. I'm just not sure about what they're going to get out of those guys in the backfield who are actually carrying the football against Notre Dame.
Agreed.
Fill in the blank. It's blank that ABC has assigned Sean McDonough and Greg McElroy as the broadcast booth for this week's Miami Notre Dame football game.
It's good for us because we don't have to hear about people complaining about Herb Street and his buddy. So I'm okay with it. I like those. I like these two guys. I honestly won't be paying a whole lot of attention to what the announcers are saying because I just won't. I'll be watching the actual game itself.
Oh, you will. You will. You'll
It'll be
find a
on.
way. You'll complain about something.
Nope,
Come on.
I don't ever complain about announcers ever. I don't know what you're talking about. But I will say this, announcers never ruin the game for me. Like that's not, yes, I will have some critiques and things of that nature.
Right.
I don't care.
There
I
might be
want to
some
watch
things
the
that
game.
drive you nuts, but they're not going to ruin the game.
Correct. 100%. So, I mean, it's good because apparently Notre Dame fans, at least the ones on our board, prefer these two than the other two. So it's a win.
Honestly, Fowler and Herbstreit are going to be doing the LSU Clemson game the night before. So McDonough and McElroy get the Notre Dame Miami game. To me, like these are their top two booths, obviously. Those two crews, to me, this is the one that I think is actually better. Like Sean McDonough has been around. He is a professional play-by-play guy. I realize they've got Fowler in there and he's been at ESPN for a million years, but Sean McDonough, maybe one of the more underrated, especially like guys who have called World Series and games that matter, whether it's playoffs, college football, NFL. He's done Monday Night Football before. And I've said this before, Greg McElroy, you can tell Greg McElroy puts in the work. You can tell that he's doing his homework and he's actually researching. That doesn't mean he's going to nail everything about, everything over the course of a broadcast, but I think that this is a really, really low-key, underrated, really good broadcast crew. So I'll be at the game. I won't be watching on TV, but, I will record it and go back after the fact and watch some of it. But I'd be really happy if I were sitting at home watching this game with McDonough and McElroy doing the game.
Yeah, I'll be sitting at home and I will be listening and I will be sure to text Sean all of my gripes.
He just said this. Are you kidding me? All right. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll continue with more rapid fire, including which 80s or 90s action movie would you compare to this year's Notre Dame football team?
Man, you had me on this one.
I thought it might be tough. I'm curious to see what Vince's answer is going to be. We're going to do Notre Dame and Miami on this one. That's coming up next when we return. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. Budweiser's weekday sports beat with IrishBreakdown.com, along with Vince DeDario. I'm Sean Stires. Don't forget, game day coverage, 3 o'clock Eastern time here on Sports Radio WSBT this Sunday. The new revamped game day show. They'll be on before every Notre Dame football game all season long. Tim Grau, Jim Irizarry, on for 3.5 hours. A host of others, Eric Hansen, Tyler Horka, special guests, Tony Rice and Mike Golick Jr. among this week's guests on the show. So tune in, the all-new revamped game day show, 4.5 hours before every Notre Dame game, home and away, all season long. They start at 3 o'clock Eastern time this Sunday. I can't believe it's actually game week, Vince.
3.5 hours is a really, really long time to do a show. So I salute those guys. But no, I can't believe it's game week either. I don't believe it. It's not really true. And I'll believe it when Sunday actually rolls around. I can't believe we have to wait till Sunday night.
I know.
There's so much good football on Saturday, which is
a long
great.
way. Yep.
But you're going to be in the air. I'm going to be elsewhere, not watching any football. So I'm going to have to watch stuff recorded and all that kind of stuff too. And then we got to wait all day on Sunday. That is going to be the worst, waiting all day for this game.
By the way, I want to drop this. Irish for Life 99 in the YouTube chat says he wants to invite anyone who's going to the game this Sunday in the Miami area. They're meeting at a Sports Grill Miami Lake. I believe the name of the franchise is Sports Grill. There's a Miami Lake location, which is just like maybe 10 or 15 minutes away from the stadium. They're going to meet at 3 o'clock Sunday for a little pregame get-together. He says the owner's a huge Notre Dame fan. Their wings are phenomenal. I saw him post this on the Champions Lounge earlier. I'm staying in Miami Lakes, so I think I'm staying like maybe 5 minutes from this place. So I might have to get over and hit up some wings Sunday, it sounds like. So,
man,
yeah.
So you got your Sunday planned.
I know. I saw these. I went to the website, grilled hot wings. That sounds like next to smoked. I like smoked wings. Next to smoked wings, grilled hot wings might be the way to go. My mouth is watering right now. Daniel says, what channel? I don't know if he's talking about what I was talking about with the game day show and all that. 960 AM, 106.1 FM, the Sports Radio WSBT app. They will also be on the Sports Radio WSBT YouTube channel. Whose car are we going to take is what Daniel says.
And it's also on 101.5, I believe, as well.
Okay.
I think that's what.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well,
yeah. I got that text when we were talking about it last time from Tim.
So game day is also going to be on Sunday.
That's what he said.
101.5. Okay.
That's what he told me.
I've got to get that clarification.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll see.
So on the Bill Simmons podcast, Vince, they compared each NFL team to an 80s or 90s action movie. So we're not going to go that deep with every NFL team. But here's what I want to know. Which 80s or 90s action movie would you compare this year's Notre Dame football team to? What's your metaphor or what's your analogy? However, which way you want to go with this.
I spent some time on this, and this is what I came up with for Notre Dame. My Notre Dame one, I feel really, really good about. My Miami one, we'll see. But the Notre Dame one, here's what I got. 1994, taking you back.
Okay.
Blockbuster, starring Keanu Reeves. Speed.
Oh, Speed. I thought I couldn't remember what your Point Break was from. You said Keanu, and I thought maybe you're going Point Break, but going a different direction.
Speed. Notre Dame.
He was a former quarterback turned FBI agent in Point Break. So,
well, he was also a quarterback in The Replacements, but I'm not going there. That was last year when they had all the injuries. We're not doing that this year, and that's not an action movie, obviously, either. But I'm going with Speed because I believe that Notre Dame has the speed and athleticism to win a heck of a lot of games this year and make a run in the playoffs. So I'm going with Speed, Sean Stires.
Honestly, I thought you might go Top Gun with this. You know, like like CJ Carr, the young hotshot, pilot like Maverick and all that kind of stuff. And, like they did have the need for speed and everything else. And
That is true. That is true.
Yeah, so I thought you might go Top Gun, but I wasn't sure exactly. But I like that. I like that. Speed kills.
What do you got? What did you come up with?
Okay, so I thought long and hard about this, as you might imagine, because there's so many classics to choose from in this genre right up my alley. And, like from my time, I realize you're like maybe a little bit, on the other side of this time period. But I mean, you've got Die Hard and Lethal Weapon, all these action great franchises, Predator and Rambo and everything else. But at the end of the day, for this Notre Dame season, I went with one of the classics from the action game. And as it turns out, Irish Gordian Knot has the correct answer.
Ooh.
It is Terminator 2, a great sequel to an original that was already great in its own right. Terminator 2.
I see what you're doing there.
Built upon what was already great, took it to another level. T2, you've got the rebuilt Arnold coming back to protect the young, promised future leader, John Connor, which, is like, it's like this great and improved upon Irish offensive line coming back to protect the young promised leader in CJ Carr. And then you've got like the new villain in T2 was Robert Patrick as the cop who's like shape-shifting with the special effects and all that kind of stuff. He's trying to kill John Connor, and it's like opposing defenses are going to take different shapes every week trying to stomp out CJ Carr. So Terminator 2 is my 80s, 90s action flick from 1991, Notre Dame football this season.
Nice. I like it. That's good. I see what you did there with the first one was really, really good.
Yes.
And the second, I like where you
and we're following up with the sequel. That's right. You got like little tweaks.
Yeah.
To make it even better. So
time code. Nobody said Rudy because Rudy's not an action movie.
Yes.
Come on, man. Follow instructions.
Yes.
I will say, and I know.
Well, he said, thank God nobody said Rudy.
Okay.
Yeah, not an action movie.
I almost as a joke, I almost said Back to the Future because I know.
I was honestly wondering if you might go there as well. Well, Back to the Future. It's my answer for everything.
Because Notre Dame going back to, the history of, national championships.
Exactly.
But I realized that's probably not an action movie, so I wasn't going to go there.
Kindergarten Cop. Interesting answer. Bloodsport. Okay, we're just going. Yeah. Bill Walsh, Slapshot, 79. Send in the Hanson brothers.
Yeah, that's outside the scope. 80s
Tell you what,
90s.
I was at this. I went to see Nobody 2, Bob Odenkirk, over the weekend.
Right.
There was this group of guys in the front row, and I'm not really sure, but like they reminded me of the Hanson brothers because they were just making comments the whole movie and all this different.
Were they putting on the foil?
Oh, they look like they might have been putting on the foil afterwards. Okay, so we did Notre Dame. How about this week's opponent, the Miami Hurricanes? 80s, 90s action movie that reminds you of this year's Miami Hurricanes.
So this is an interesting one. I had trouble with this one because I wasn't sure if I wanted to go like straight comedy and just, come up with some movie that was like, basically saying Miami stinks. But I didn't want to do that because my college football playoff, I have Miami making it. So I can't go there, right? I can't say that they're going to be awful. So I went with, now roll with me here for a second.
Okay.
I went with the 1998 blockbuster Armageddon. Here's why.
I love that movie, by the way.
They did save the day, which means they're a good football team, right? Like at the end of the day, they did save the day. But the leading character ends up blowing himself up at the end. And I think Carson Beck is not your guy you want in crunch time.
It's good.
And so I think he's going to blow himself up metaphorically.
Okay.
And they're not
quite as heroic as Bruce Willis, but yeah.
100%. But like that was my thought process. Because I think Miami's a good football team. They're a top 10 football team, right? I have them getting in as the 11 seed in my college football playoff bracket. So I can't say that they're going to be awful. But I don't think Carson Beck is the guy. So he blows himself up. There you go.
Okay. I like that. This is hard because in all the action movies, like they're based around the hero, right?
Right.
The hero wins every week. And so,
Right.
like, we're doing Miami for
Right.
this one, you know? But there's this particular, I don't think anyone in a million years is going to guess the direction that I'm going here. There's this particular action hero that is just so hard to explain because he was maybe the least likable of all time, of like all the action heroes. He was not Bruce Willis. He was not Mel Gibson. He was not, you know, Rambo, Sylvester Stallone. He was, you know, like he was none of these guys. And that is the one and only Steven Seagal. Are you familiar with any of Steven Seagal's work?
Under Siege.
Ah, there you go. Under Siege. Okay. He's basically the same guy in every movie.
Yes,
you know,
he is. Yes, he
in
is.
Steven Seagal's mind, he is the greatest thing ever. Like, no one ever gets to hit him. You know, he never faces any real adversity. He's just like killing everybody and beating everybody up with his, you know, whatever his martial arts are and all that different stuff. You know, so whether it's Under Siege or Hard to Kill or Marked for Death, whatever, they all had like 2 or 3 word titles, by the way. But like, he was always the hero of his own story. You know, they were somewhat entertaining, but they were always just generally, you know, also a little bit mid. So in this little metaphor, Steven Seagal is Carson Beck, and the movie is Above the Law, which historically kind of describes Miami anyway, right? Above the law.
Good call.
So Above the Law, not completely unentertaining, but at the end of the day, the only people who really thought or bought Steven Seagal as the lead, you know, the lead of this franchise, were diehard Steven Seagal fans. Sharon Stone, by the way, Seagal's wife. So you also have kind of the, you know, like Hannah Cavender, you know, parallel to, you know, Carson Beck and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, who are the only people who completely buy into Carson Beck? Leading
Miami fans.
Great hearts. Diehard Miami fans, right?
Yep.
So, like, it'll be entertaining. He'll do some entertaining things. He'll have his moments and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, it's still, you know, like a 5 or 6 out of 10 at best. So Above the Law is my 80s, 90s Miami Hurricanes action.
That was well played. That was well thought out. That was well played. And it's very, very accurate. So I think you win that round.
All right. All right.
Good job.
Gordy Nutt says no to Above the Law. He transferred away from UGA, not to Georgia. That's fair point. Well played. Well played on that point, because look at all the things going on down there. Irish Gordy and Nutt in the YouTube chat also asks, who would you bring back from the 88 Notre Dame team if you had a time-traveling DeLorean?
Oh,
I think the easy answer is Zorich, right? Brian Driscoll had an interview with Chris Zorich today, you know, like one of the heartbeat guys of that team. But honestly, I mean, Rocket Ismail was on that team.
How do you not go?
Waters was on that team.
There's a lot of talent on that team, man. A lot of talent. And yeah, how do you not bring Rocket? Like, can you imagine Rocket in like modern day offenses? I mean,
I know.
Goodness. They would do such a good job of getting him the football in space and, you know, all of those different things. Like
the things that they would do him. Gordy Knott says Tony Rice. No. And I mean, Tony Rice, better passer than your typical option quarterback,
sure,
but still not on the level of like today's game, right? Like if we're applying him in today's game, I don't know. I mean, that's a good question, though, really. Like when you look at the success that a guy like Riley Leonard could have, how would Tony Rice fare in today's game? Like it would look like, could he look somewhat similar, like to a Lamar Jackson, Riley Leonard kind of guy?
And he's a gamer. He's got the heart. He's got the He's got that Riley Leonard heart. You know what I mean? That everybody fell in love with this past year. So I mean, it's a possibility, but he wouldn't be at the top of my list. You know?
Yeah. I think Rocket or Zorich would be at the top of mine. Time Cone says Frank Stamms, another good answer. The bus not on that 88 team. He was a couple years later, but man.
Because I think what I would do is I would look for where this team is the weakest, and I would try to find the best player on the 88 team to basically fill in that gap.
Right.
So that's D-line. Okay, Zorich. Let's do it. You know, and gosh, would Rocket even be a wide receiver? Like he would just be a slash. He would just be everything. I would have him in the backfield. I would have him at wide receiver. I would have him returning kicks, obviously. All of that stuff. Oh, baby.
I think so.
Man.
You could use Rocket in just so many ways. And Ricky Waters, too, for that matter. He was a very good receiver when he was at Notre Dame, like catching the ball when he was he was still a running back, but still cut the ball very well. We got a taste of college football this weekend with a handful of games. Should week 0 just be week 1 of the season at this point?
I have never understood week 0. Never in a million. You just call it week 1.
I know.
It makes no sense to me. Why does it matter?
You're playing games. Why is it week 0?
Like, why can't you just have week 18 at the other end or whatever it ends up being? You know what I mean? I don't understand what that is. And it's not like the NFL where we're halfway through the season and you're like, week 11, here we go. Like they only count 0 and 1. That's it. I don't understand it. Makes no sense. Yes. Week 1.
Yeah. It like when you're playing week 0, it's like 0 hour in school, I guess. It's like, well, okay, it's not first period, but it's before first period, but you're still there. And if you're there, you're getting some kind of credit for it. So it should just be week 1. Feels like if they ever figure out an expanded college football playoff schedule, they're just going to shift the schedule up probably a week to accommodate the extra games, and it becomes week 1. But it just makes sense. They're playing all these games. Quit calling it week 0. It's the first week of the season. Everybody should be playing.
I don't know if it's got to be a marketing thing, right? Like, it's week 0, we're ahead of the game. I don't know. Doesn't do anything for me. It's we were all talking to each other about games this weekend, right? And we're all like, it's the first weekend of college football.
Yeah.
Week 0.
That makes week 0
sense. Yeah.
Farmageddon. That's right.
Farmageddon, baby.
All right, our last time out, and then we'll be back to wrap up Rapid Fire and Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. Winding down Budweiser's weekday sports beat with irishbreakdown.com. Got about 4 minutes to go here with Vince DeDario, Sean Stires. So, Vince, we're running out of time. I feel like we need to guess the season over-under win for the Georgia Bulldogs.
Yeah, we do.
We've only got so many days that we can keep doing these. So I figured, what the heck? We haven't done Georgia yet. I've got the schedule here. So they open with Marshall. And then let me see. Is this Austin P? Yes, Austin P.
Austin P, baby.
Week 2. Then it starts to get a little bit tougher. They go to Tennessee. They host Alabama. Then it's Kentucky, at Auburn, Ole Miss, Florida, at Mississippi State, Texas, Charlotte, Georgia Tech. Not an easy schedule.
No, not at all.
For a team that is ranked ahead of Notre Dame in one poll, and I believe maybe behind them in the other. Are they ahead of Notre Dame? They might be ahead of Notre Dame in both polls, actually.
Yes, I believe they are. I think for me, look, there's some obvious gimme games that they're going to win. There's some toss-up games in there, and you have to take that into account. I'm going to go 10.5. I think 10.5 is a nice number for the Georgia Bulldogs, considering they're a top 5 football team.
Okay. You're going 10.5. They do have a history, so I'm sure that kind of plays into the mind of those setting the lines. I feel like 10.5 is a very solid number. You know, again, like especially when you look at, maybe this was too easy when you look at it. Let me look at the schedule again. Alabama, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Florida, Texas. I mean, Alabama Tech. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's going to be 10.5. I won't be shocked if it's 9.5, but I think it's going to be 10.5.
Because I figure the toss-up games are Alabama, Georgia, right? So Alabama's a toss-up game. You know, I think Ole Miss is coming back to the pack a little bit, so I wouldn't even call that a toss-up game. Texas is obviously a toss-up game. And maybe another one in there somewhere. You could make an argument for a couple of different teams maybe, but those are the two big ones. So if you each gave them a half, now you're at 11, right? So I feel like 10.5 is a good number.
All right. We're locked in at 10.5, and it's 9.5 right now on FanDuel.
Man.
9.5.
That might be a good play.
Yeah.
Just saying.
9.5 is minus 180, or over is minus 180. Under is plus 146.
Wow.
So definitely favored to go over. I don't know what the other, sports books look like, but on FanDuel right now, it's 9.5.
9.5. Okay.
Archer says 10.5 is the line right now, with the over getting plus money and the under getting minus. Archer, I don't think you've been here in a little while, but the game is we guess which one or we try to guess what the line is. So don't spoil the line for us while we're talking through the process. I'm trying to figure it out, but I appreciate the participation anyway.
No, he said that was his guess. So,
that was his guess. Okay.
He's very definitive with his guess, though.
I know, because he was saying, because like the way you explained it there, the over is getting the plus money and the under is getting the minus. Okay, so you were just saying that's how you thought that it was going to lay out, that it would be 10.5 with the over. Okay, I thought you were saying that that's what it was. Okay, I got you. Well, I think that is pretty much it. We're going to wrap it up with that today. A lot of good stuff. Appreciate you being here. It is Notre Dame game week. We've got Notre Dame Miami kicking off at 7:30 this Sunday night. Vince, I will talk to you tomorrow.
Yes, sir. That's the plan. Right. We'll see. We'll see if somebody else has a different say.
Yep. Sounds good.